There is no paper, no plastic, and no work talk allowed. It's very exclusive.
I, no joke, just spent over an hour recording a whole review on this book. And then my jump drive crashed and lost all of it. Oh my gosh. So I have a staff meeting to get to here at my real job that pays me. And I'm trying to decide what to do. And I gotta say, that whole hour that I blabbered on about this book was kind of terrible. So I think I'm gonna switch up the format of this channel for a little bit. So first of all, welcome to Finer Things with Jess. This is my third book review. The other two, I really went in depth on the plot, which I just spent an hour doing on this book, and it's lost footage forever. But this book was kind of hard for me. So let's change it up a little bit. So maybe you guys will like a little bit of shorter content anyway. Let's get into it. The Paris Apartment by Lucy Foley. What does this book entail? A missing journalist named Ben, a swanky upscale Paris apartment in a U shape where everyone can see everyone else's business, because apparently nobody uses curtains. I don't know. A foreign country, not for me. I mean, for me, but also for the main character named Jess, who's not me. Two characters with the names of characters from New Girl, a Nick and a Jess. Good old Sweatback and Jessica Day.
Turn around.
You turn around.
Let me see your back.
Just be cool about it.
Ew, gross.
They know, Schmidt.
Sweatback? You told Sweatback? Come on, Winston.
A kitty cat with an unknown fate. A bunch of rich people with secrets, because us middle class people, we want to read about those rich people, don't we? Riots, that is like some sort of back plot line in this story that seems to be completely pointless. This is the Paris Apartment. So welcome to my channel. Like and subscribe. My hope here, this is also super scattered, so you guys are welcome for this choice material that I'm giving you today. My hope with this channel is that we'll start to do kind of a book club feel together, that I'll talk about these books and I'll ask my questions, and then we'll have some lively discussions together in the comment section. So please come back. Anyway, The Paris Apartment by Lucy Foley. This was published February 22nd, 2022. It is her most recent book. As you can see, she is a New York Times bestselling author. She is from the UK. If you don't know anything about her, I have really gotten into Lisa Jewell, who I did another review on that you can see if you scroll. It's not that far. I don't have that much content right now. And I really enjoy Lisa, and I started Googling who could I watch that was like her but not her, and Lucy came up. And I've read two of her books now. This one and The Guest List. I enjoyed The Guest List a whole lot better. This book on Goodreads has 3.69 stars out of 5 right now. And they're kind of all over the place, the reviews, which I feel like that's the truth with every book. People either love them or hate them. And I guess some people are in the middle, but I would say for this book that I would give the first half of it 2 stars because it's so slow. That is actually commentary that I've seen from a lot of people. The first half of the book is so slow, where it's just Jess trying to find her half brother Ben and not really sure if he's missing, and all of the rich people in the building have a secret and she can't decide if they're trustworthy or not, and they all seem super guilty. And I think that's why I had a really hard time getting into it, because I feel like normally with mysteries everybody's a suspect but nobody's a suspect, and in this book everybody was like, I did what I did, kind of a feel where you're like, so everybody's in on it? That's really weird, because then you're trying to figure out who the one was that's the one. Anyway, it was really slow in the first half, and I got to the point where I was thinking to myself, if this book doesn't speed up, I'm done reading it. And I swear Lucy heard me, because then she started giving us answers, and I got into it, and I would give the second half of the book probably a 4. Both of her books, the end has shocked me, and I did not see it coming. Of note, this is the nominee for the Best Mystery Thriller of 2022. I don't know which one actually won the award. I didn't look. But I will say that of all the mysteries I've been reading, this is the first one that actually had a couple chapters of thriller, don't go in there, why'd you go upstairs, why'd you go that way, kind of a feel to it, like horror movie but not horror movie.
Why did she go in there? I mean, he's behind the door.
One of the things we go over in this channel is, why did the author write this book? Because I think that's interesting. I have no ideas, so what made you write this book? And she said, quote, I was finishing a draft of The Guest List while staying in a rather threadbare but beautiful Airbnb in Paris, and I loved the atmospheric creepiness of the building. The dark stairwell, the rear window-esque setup of all the apartments arranged around a central courtyard so you could snoop on your neighbors, the smell of stale cigarette smoke hanging in the air in the hallways, which everybody smoked in this book. It just felt like there was a story to be told there, and I wanted to tell it. So, who's in this book? We've got Ben, who's a 30-something journalist trying to, he writes reviews, but he's trying to break into investigative journalism. We've got his half-sister Jess, and she is a mess. No pun intended, no rhyme, whatever. Both of them have the same mom, but different dads. Their dads are alive, but want nothing to do with them. You later find out that Jess's dad is a dirty cop. No real information on Ben's dad. Ben was adopted after their mom died by a family, and then Jess aged out of the foster care system. So she never found stability. She never found permanency. He went to private schools and college. She's bounced around. So they have very different lives. They are very disconnected. They see each other very infrequently. They don't know each other very well. And the premise of the book is that he's about to break his big story that's a mystery, and she's showing up at the worst time ever, fleeing from bad circumstances in England. And when she gets there, he's gone, and the whole book is her trying to figure out where he is. And for the first half of it, she's not even sure if he's missing or if he just took off to chase a story or something, and she wasn't there for it, or she missed him. He knew she was coming. He left her a voicemail on how to get in, and maybe he ran off to chase a story, and now she's left to fend for herself. In the 5-story apartment, we have Antoine on the first floor, who's married to Dominique. We never hear his perspective, because that's the thing with Lucy Foley's books is you are in the first person perspective of several people, and the way the plot moves is you are moving forward within their perspective, and then sometimes they'll flash back in their perspective thinking about something that happened, but you're always in the main plot point. And so first floor, we're never in his perspective, but he's an alcoholic with a bad marriage. Early on in the book, his wife leaves him. We have Nick, who's on the second floor. He was Ben's college friend. He's the reason Ben's living there. He's very mysterious. He's very quiet. He seems like the nice guy. I think that's what he's called on the back of the book. Yep. So we have the alcoholic on the first floor, the nice guy on the second floor named Nick. On the third floor is where Ben's living. On the fourth floor, we have Mimi, who's a 20-year-old weirdo. She's very aloof. She has a roommate named Camille, who's very promiscuous and a party girl. And then on the fifth floor, you have the socialite, which this is the penthouse. Her name is Sophie, and Sophie's just in her 50s, and she's rich and stuck up and doesn't like anybody. And then you have the concierge, who never gets a name. She lives in the cabin. She's an elderly lady, and she indicates very early on that she's holding everybody's secrets, and they can't get rid of her because she knows all the dirt. And the whole story is just them being very suspicious, just trying to figure out where Ben is, nobody being helpful except for Nick, and she's digging through his life. And so right on in the book, I'm not this might seem like a spoiler, but the clues right away. She makes her way into the building by breaking in, picks the lock to his door because she's got to sleep somewhere, and she walks in and smells a bleach smell. All of the towels are missing in his apartment. The curtains are missing. His wallet and keys are there. The cat has blood spots on it, and she finds expensive lingerie in his bed. And so all this weird stuff is happening. The building itself is a character too, I didn't note. It's this creepy, big, rich apartment, and Jess is putting the pieces together of how did my brother afford this? How is he here? Why are these people so weird? And this is really just a story of her trying to figure out what happened to her brother. We spend the majority of the time, I feel like, in Jess's perspective, but we're always jumping around. She takes up the majority of the book. Some of the trigger warnings for this book, and then I'll give my recommendation on whether or not I think that it's worth the read, and then I'll go into some spoilers, and then hopefully this won't be an hour long because I got places to go and I have a headache from just spending so much time on wasted footage. Some of the trigger warnings: sexual harassment, sex work, domestic violence, cheating, alcoholism, suicide, self-harm, and murder. If you can't handle those, I wouldn't read this book. Do I think you should read this book? I don't know. You're welcome for my great recommendation here. I really, really enjoyed the guest list from her. I will say that the endings of both of her books, I'm left wanting more. I feel like the twists are always I cannot predict them, and maybe I'm just not that bright, but they come and I'm I'll audibly have a reaction. With the guest list, my husband was in bed next to me and I just was freaking out and he was laughing at me. And I enjoy that. I want to read more of her books. I think she's a very engaging author. This book has some mixed reviews, but she has some other reviews, other books with really great reviews. You spend so much time in everyone's perspective, and then in the end, I feel like I'm just kind of dropped, and I don't get to see where they all end up from their perspective. And I wish that her stories had that aspect of it, but I don't know if I'm ever really, I don't know, even... I'm hard to please with endings. Let's be fair there. That's who I am as a person. I would recommend read the guest list, get the feel of her writing, and then read this book. Because there's some people that were like, I could not put this book down. It was so good. It's her best book ever. And then there are other people like me who are like, it was so slow and it took forever to get to the point. But then I feel like there was a great payoff. Like I said, I feel like the first half of the book would get a 2 and the second half would get a 4. But I'm not great at math, but that says a 3 for the book. And I don't feel like a 3 is a fair rating because I do feel like the payoff comes. So yes, read it, but maybe start with the guest list. I did listen to the audiobook because at first I wasn't going to do a review for this book, which is fitting because it's been such a freaking disaster. I spent like 4 hours making an outline yesterday and it just, all my work feels like wasted effort. But I wasn't gonna review it, and then I just felt like I should, and because it was so slow and then everything happens at once, I don't feel like a lot of the information is stored away in my brain. And so I listened to a bunch of the audiobook to remind myself of plot points, and the audiobook's really good. There's tons of different people doing the voices and they all do a very good job. Nobody sounds like a robot. It'd be a good listen audiobook if you're driving somewhere along or you're cleaning and you just want something to kind of have in the background. So I guess I gave some spoilers in the trigger warnings, but I also feel like you need to know those. I didn't give away a ton. So let's get into the plot really quick. So Jess is spending forever trying to figure out if Ben's even missing. And you find out pretty early on that she's not, like, they're not super close, so she can't tell if he's just chasing the story or if he's missing. Everyone in their own perspective is indicating that they're guilty. She ends up deciding she only really trusts Nick, who's on the second floor, who was Ben's college friend. So right away you're like, well, I can't trust this guy if she trusts him. She gets Ben's editor involved. He's trying to help her. She doesn't really trust him at all. Everyone's being super suspicious and unwelcoming of her and telling her just to leave. And as she's digging and digging and digging, and people are reminiscing back on Ben, which you really end up like this whole book in a big nutshell. Ben and Nick did a summer traveling, like they traveled in college on railway to a bunch of countries. They ended up in Amsterdam together. There, they were going to go down to some live sex show, which is legal there. And as they're walking down the stairs, Nick is like, I can't go down there. And he freezes and decides he's not going to go in. And a bunch of the dudes are making fun of him. And then Ben's like, no, I'll go with you. We'll go together to just kill time while they're in there. And while they're doing a bunch of drugs in Amsterdam, Nick is revealing to Ben that when he was 16, his dad, who's an awful person, took him to a prostitute and said that this is how you're going to be a man. And here it's revealed that all the riches Nick has is because his family owns this dance, like risque dance place that afterwards all the women are sex slaves and they are prostitutes. The front for all of the family's money is that they own a wine company and the patrons buy wine, which are the women. In this conversation, they get more and more high, and then my lips are real dry. Sorry, babe. In this conversation, they get really high, wander around, end up in an alleyway, and this is where you end up realizing that Nick is gay. He and Ben have a sexual encounter in an alleyway. It's kind of revealed that I guess maybe Ben is bisexual. It's never really confirmed, but they decide to leave what happened in the alleyway, and all these years later, Ben goes to Paris and wants to meet up with Nick, who's just moved back after his tech company failed. And Ben's telling him, I just really want to move to Paris. I can't handle England anymore. Nick gets him into the apartment. And what you end up realizing later on in the book is that it's not just an apartment, it is a family house. The penthouse where Sophie lives is where Jack also lives. Jack is the father of Nick. The first floor is Antoine. Nick and Antoine are brothers. Their mom died when they were young. Then Jack married Sophie. Sophie and Jack are the parents of Mimi. And the entire reason why Ben is there is because all these years later, he was intrigued by the family and wanted to be part of them, but he also wanted to take them down. And this is his way to get into investigative journalism, which in general, I'd be like, that's really gross of you to like take advantage of your friend. But no, you deserve to be taken down. You are living off the back of abused women. Don't like it. Jess ends up discovering this club with the help of Theo, who is Ben's editor. They end up meeting up with one of the sex workers that Ben was interviewing and trying to help. She spills all the beans. She gives them all sorts of like video evidence that they can use. And at the same time, you're finding out that Sophie and Ben had a sexual relationship throughout the book. That's the expensive underwear she found. That relationship ended up ending because it became obvious to Sophie that Ben was just using her for information.
It's not that you dumped my granddaughter, and it's not that you want children. It's that you lied to me. Can't you see that? Can't you see? Oh, never trust him.
Throughout the book, she's this very mysterious woman, and you end up basically realizing that she too is from another country. She was one of the sex workers, and she somehow married Jack, which that's the thing with all these women. They are all illegal immigrants in Paris. Jack has taken all of their passports and is holding them hostage. They have to continue working there. Somehow Sophie made her way out and married Jack, and she ends her relationship with Ben. And then as far as Mimi's concerned, and the concierge, we'll go there both. You find out that the concierge is like, I think she's from Russia. I don't remember. She's never given a name. She's mysterious the whole time because she seems like she wants to help. She keeps talking about her daughter who came to Paris as a dancer. You kind of get the feeling that her daughter's nowhere to be found. And what you really end up finding out through Irina, which Irina is the dancer that Jess and Theo end up getting all this information from, is that the concierge's daughter came to Paris for a new life, ended up at this dance studio, ended up pregnant by one of the patrons. Her mom was trying to get there. It took her 6 months to get there. She ended up getting a visa, like a short couple week visa. And by the time she got there, her daughter had died in childbirth. She ends up in this apartment because Sophie could not get pregnant, and she ends up raising Mimi, and Mimi is the concierge's granddaughter. So they're all kind of connected. As far as Mimi's concerned, girl is crazy, okay? She spends the whole book thirsting over Ben, stalking Ben, looking at him through the windows, deciding in her mind that they're like in love, even though he gives no indication whatsoever that he's interested. In fact, he's sleeping with her mom. Super messed up. She buys lingerie to wear to surprise him. You end up finding out that like she was in Catholic girls' school for a while because the big theme of the book is like her dad hid her from men, trying to make her proper, even though he's owning sex slaves because he's a hypocrite and a jerk. She got kicked out of the school because she stalked and harassed her art teacher and ended up spending the rest of her school years being tutored by a private tutor. So Mimi's like whole flashback story is all about her like thirsting for Ben and their fake relationship, and she's painting portraits of him that she's one day gonna give him, and she's buying lingerie, and she's building up this whole romance in her head. And as this is happening, Ben's getting all the information. He's sleeping with Sophie. Nick and Antoine are feeling really jealous of Ben because he's bonding with their dad, which really bothers them because their dad is abusive to them and belittling to them, and they're never good enough. Nick's stuck there now because he's drained all his dad's money, and his dad's not going to spend any more money on him and his fake business ventures. Like, from now on, you're working for the family. Antoine's supposed to be his protege, but he's a hot mess. Dad's just a horrible person, and he's kind of in and out. Like, you kind of gather that he travels a lot. And throughout the book, I was like, I thought he was there in present time. I didn't realize he was texting the boys and not there. And throughout the book, like, we're kind of flashing to Ben, who, I know I'm supposed to be talking about Mimi, but we're flashing to Ben, who like, or the incident where you think Ben's getting murdered, but it's never really being revealed who he is. So we're kind of like, the book is weaving story together. So back to Mimi and her craziness. So she's bought the lingerie. She is stalking Ben. She goes to his apartment. And I just want to read this because I feel like this is the picture of Mimi that you really need. She's wearing lingerie. He left. She's going to surprise him with herself when he comes back. I sprayed his lemon-scented cologne down the front of my shirt and in my hair. I opened his closet and buried my face in his shirts. But better were the shirts in his laundry basket, the ones he had worn. Look, I am married to a stinky man, okay? Like, he doesn't smell all the time, but like, I could not imagine burying my face into his dirty laundry. Gross. Sorry, honey. So better are the ones that he'd worn, the stinky old BO ones. Because she also is constantly talking about how he smelled like sweat. It's gross. Better even than that were the short hairs I found around the sink where he'd shaved and hadn't managed to wash them all away. I collected several on my finger and I swallowed them.
No. Don't eat the burrito.
That's all you need to know about Mimi, guys. Girl needs help. Poor concierge. Her daughter used and abused and dead, and this is what she gets as her consolation prize. Anyway, as she's snooping around waiting for him in the lingerie, she hacks into his computer, finds the story he's been writing, realizes that they own sex slaves, realizes that she's adopted. She did not know this. She goes to Nick. Nick then finally puts the pieces together that this is the only reason why Ben connected with him. Nick tells the dad. What ends up happening, here's the twist of the book, and I'm only 23 minutes in. Which who knows how much will be cut out, probably a lot. Anyway, we're at the twist of the book, and Mimi is in her room devastated that Ben has been writing all these things about her and is ready to publish an article on her family, and she's watching him, typing. The door opens, her dad walks in with a bottle of wine, and her dad starts beating him with the wine bottle. And Ben makes his way to the window, screams for help. Mimi grabs her canvas knife, which makes tons of appearances in this book, goes into the apartment, rationalizes to herself, well, this isn't really my dad and he's a bad guy, and she stabs him to death. Sophie finds the mess, wraps Jack up in the curtains, uses all of Ben's towels to clean up the mess, and as she's bleaching the floor, Nick and Antoine show up thinking that Ben has been murdered, and she tells them, like, your dad left. It's best if we just don't tell anyone your dad came back to Paris tonight. He needs to be as far away removed from this situation as he possibly could be. So they help her bury Jack in the garden, which is noted at some point that the garden's freshly upturned. And then she sneaks Ben up to the maid's quarter in the attic, which is frequently discussed and you know something's weird about it. They had no idea that Ben was alive. They thought they buried Ben. In the very end, Jess is finding all this out. There's a huge chase. This is where the thriller portion happens, where they're chasing her. She makes her way up to the maid quarters to try and hide from them, and she finds Ben barely alive. She convinces them, like, Nick's completely shocked. She ends up convincing Sophie to let them go by saying, like, I'm not going to turn Mimi in. Mimi saved his life. Why would I turn her in? Girl's fine as far as I'm concerned. I wouldn't have a brother if she didn't get stabby. So Sophie agrees. They take a taxi. They leave. They tell the hospital that he crashed on his Vespa and that's why he's a hot mess. You flash forward to a week later and they're in the hospital, like, eating food, and he's telling her, like, this could have been our mom. I couldn't let go of the story. I had to chase it. I had to take them down, kind of a thing. And Theo comes in as they're in the hospital. They're like, we have to save these women, but how do we go about this in a way where the women aren't punished? Because that's kind of what happens a lot in these, like, you take down the sex ring and then all these women would be sent back to the place they were fleeing from, and nobody wants that. So they write Sophie a letter and basically tell her, like, if you cooperate with us, we will keep you out of the story, and what we want you to do is to sell all your stuff, like black market kind of a way. There's no paper trail. Sell your stuff. We're going to pay these women, let them slip into obscurity, and then we're going to post this story. She agrees because, I mean, otherwise she would have gone down too. And then there's an article in the paper that's released and it mentions that they think that Jack is missing. They think that Jack has been in hiding because the story came out, which is a great cover for them because nobody's going to think he's dead. You find out that Antoine was listed in the story as his right-hand man. Antoine ended up killing himself to avoid going to prison, and all the women are now missing and they don't really know what to do. They're like, well, we didn't think we'd have a case, but now all this information is being posted online of photos and names of people that went to the club because you find out the police are involved. Like, it's a big thing where a bunch of people are way high up or dirty and involved. And the book kind of ends knowing that Mimi went to south of France to recuperate and paint. Sophie is admitting, like, I am imprisoned in this place forever because my husband's buried in the garden. Antoine's dead. Nick disappeared. She thinks she's never going to see him again. He's going to go find a new life somewhere far, far away from this hot mess of a disaster. And the concierge is also left. And when the concierge left, she took Sophie's dog. This tiny little dog that's mentioned throughout the book, and I don't know why.
Do you have a question, Kelly?
Yeah, I have a lot of questions. Number one, how dare you?
It irritates me because why'd you take the woman's dog? You're never talking in this book about, like, in her perspective, she's never like, this dog is super cool and Sophie's just a jerk to it. Like, she just takes the dog. I don't know why. Anyway, so rude. At the very end of the book, Jess has said she took a cut of the money that the sex workers were getting was kind of like her finder's fee, which I'm not upset about because Jess lived a really difficult life. Like, she never had an easy break. She was a foster kid. Like, I used to be a foster mom, and these kids that age out of the system have it super rough. So if it weren't for her risking her life, these women wouldn't be free. So take your cut. She's got a studio in Rome. She's finally going to travel and make something of herself. Ben is going to stay in Paris, continuing to build his name as an investigative journalist. So all that's left in Paris now is Sophie and Ben. Are they going to hook up again?
Oh, never trust him.
We don't know. But as Jess is about to get on the train, she sees the concierge with the stolen dog and realizes that she's going to south of France, and she leaves her alone because she says she deserves to slip into obscurity. So I guess the concierge is going to south of France with Mimi. So this is the Paris apartment. And I really got to go soon, so I got to get moving. Got a headache. Got stuff to do. Already filmed this once. Ran right through it. How did I feel about the book? I wish it was faster. I wish the information would have been delivered quicker throughout the book instead of, like, all of a sudden at once. I'm having a really hard time keeping it in my head because of that. What I want to know, here are my questions. Let's talk about this. How did the concierge get her job? Because throughout the book, it's obvious that nobody knows that she's Mimi's grandma. But she talks about how they know her secrets, but at the same time, Mimi doesn't know it's her grandma. How'd she get this job? Why does she have this job? Like, why do they need this person at all? When she goes to by the time she goes to the south of France, like, I'm assuming Mimi doesn't know that she's her grandma because she disappeared the night everything happened. Is she gonna tell her? This is where I'm kind of like, we spend so long on their perspective, it would have been nice to have, like, heard that circled and it's not. And like, what happened to the cat? The cat is like this huge plot point. We talk about the cat all the time, not just the blood on its fur. Where's the cat at? Can we at least hear the cats with Ben? I want to know. And what the heck is up with the dog? Can someone please like circle that square for me? All right, I gotta go. What do you want me to read next? It's a good question, huh? Sorry this was so terrible, but like, my goodness, how frustrating. Thanks for watching, guys. Bye.